Number 11, Keith Locke.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Defence and asks, did the New Zealand Defence Force, when preparing their response dated 2nd of May 2011, talk to any of the Afghan civilians interviewed by Jon Stephenson in the Metro article Eyes Wide Shut and subsequently seen on the subsequent 60 Minutes TV special? If so, who?
The Honourable Dr Wayne Mapp.
Mr Speaker, no.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.